I'm gonna think for myself.
Tony, we need you if we're going to war. Who are you? Friend or foe?
If you go with him, no one will ever forgive you. Life matters even more than love.
Hello, I'm Thomas Carruthers.
And I'm Rhian Holmes.
And today is our third emergency podcast. We did No Time to Die. I mean, we're like huge Bond fans, and that lived up to the expectations. Yesterday, we recorded our Spider-Man episode. Will wanted to do that. And we got on Katrina, who's a big fan, me to a lesser extent. However, my Marvel is musical theatre. My Marvel is the recently deceased Stephen Sondheim that we'll be celebrating with you, Rhian, later in the year. You're going to come on a couple of those, you said.
Yes.
We've got 2 months of that. But yes, I think, right, lots to talk about. West Side Story 2021, arguably not my most anticipated movie of the year. Probably not. I think, right. I don't know how to talk about this.
Give it a go.
Because we left the cinema yesterday, my grandma, my mum, and my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking, and immediately we jumped to, what's it called? Contrast and comparison. Now, in a vacuum, this is one of the best movies I've ever seen. But it's not in a vacuum. And that is
that you saying if it was the only film
yeah,
that existed, it would be my favorite?
Well, it's like the old Noam Macdonald joke when he goes, I was stuck on a desert island and those 5 albums I brought didn't help a damn thing. But rest in peace. In a vacuum, yes, this is an excellent film and deserves all the critical acclaim that it is currently receiving. And also, not in a vacuum, it probably deserves an awful lot of the acclaim it's receiving.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to start on a downer, but fundamentally, almost at its core, I can't say that it's an irrelevant movie because it's not. It's got a lot going for it, and it makes changes that are interesting, and a lot of them pay off.
Yes.
And are for the better. And however, morally speaking, West Side Story 1961 is a perfect film. No, sorry, not morally speaking. That's what I'm saying it the wrong way now. It's a perfect film, and it's a perfect piece of art. Morally speaking, the only issue is that of the casting of Natalie Wood and that of, oh my God, the guy who played Bernardo, which I'm going to get up in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
How, apart from that, it is a fundamentally perfect film. It's one of my favorite films of all time. And when people ask me what I think the greatest musical film of all time is, I say it's that. And I also think it's one of the finest adaptations from stage to screen ever, because all of the changes that it makes are for the better.
Mm-hmm.
However, as been discussed by a litany of people, Natalie Wood and George Chakiris, that's it. They're not Latinx people, and that's just fundamentally wrong in so many ways. And so this film does that better.
Yeah, I agree. It's not, and like not even in just casting, but I feel like on the whole, the story is more kind of centered in the Puerto Rican experience. You see a lot more of, you know, the women and the men talking with more agency. You get a lot more kind of Spanish interwoven into the dialogue,
Yes.
which I really appreciated. And just on the whole, you get more of like a view of both sides, whereas I feel like the show and the original, it's whitewashed across the board in terms of who is telling the story most.
I think it's
You might
most.
disagree, but
No, I
that's
think
just
no,
the
I
sense
think
I
it's
got.
very. No, I agree with you. I think there is a sweet spot in the film where in the original film, and not in the original text because some of the songs are placed differently, but there's a sweet spot in the film where Giafisa Krupke follows America, and they are both very similar songs exemplifying both of these stories and both of these groups and these experiences and their retaliations and their reactions to the society of the time. You don't get that with Jet Song. Jet Song is a phenomenal number. There is no Shark Song. And we get a somewhat Shark Song here. They sing, I don't want to make a wild guess. Some sort of, they sing a Spanish song. I don't know whether that was written for the film or whether that's a traditional Spanish song, but they sing that here, and that kind of balances it out. But also you get the same thing with Cool. There isn't really the kind of song that we get that way. That reverse is I Feel Pretty, which again kind of works, is a great song, but isn't an exact mirror of, well, in this, Cool's entirely different anyway, but it's not a reaction from the Sharks. They've lost Bernardo. What do they do now? Whereas Cool in the film works so excellently well in 1961 because it's that reaction of, I want to talk about this. There are certain changes that 1961 makes from the original show, which I always say make it the finest adaptation from stage to screen. Mm-hmm. The changes of bringing I Feel Pretty forward, the swapping of Krupke and Cool, and placing the rumble later and placing the rumble after I Feel Pretty, which this film doesn't do for some reason. And I think it's one of those changes that I don't know if we're making this film that wrongs all the rights of the original text. Mm-hmm. Why not keep one of the rights that were already, one of the wrongs that was already righted? Going straight from the rumble to I Feel Pretty didn't work for me here. And maybe it works that there's a touch of tragedy, that Maria is so joyous and happy, and we have the like joy of that.
Blissfully unaware. Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it didn't feel like it diminished from the drama of what we just witnessed. I think it served a purpose of, again, showing the dynamic between Shark Girls, but also just this whole other side of town that can be so oblivious to like the violence that is happening. And like I think it would have worked either way. Like I can understand the reasons for having it, you know, before everything kicks off. But I think because I was thinking of it in terms of like Act 1 and Act 2. Obviously with the brawl being the big kind of closer. And so I could kind of compartmentalize when looking at it from that point onwards. I don't know.
Well, let's talk generally about West Side Story. Obviously, my feelings are known on this. We've done a whole episode on it. I think it probably is the best musical of all time.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying that it wasn't your most anticipated film of the year. It was my most anticipated film of last year.
Well, that's another matter entirely.
And then obviously into this year as well. Love the music, love the story. A big fan of Romeo and Juliet as well, Baz Luhrmann's adaptation. So I was really excited to see what they did with it. Kind of, like you say, still honoring the original, but making those like necessary changes to kind of reflect the world now. And I think there were moments when that felt a little bit clunky and a little bit forced, but on the whole, I think they really did it justice. Obviously, we can get into it more later and what's the change. Yeah, I think I don't really know what kind of missed the mark in terms of like that atmosphere that I was expecting. maybe because
Yeah,
I was in.
let's give ourselves a break. We are both fresh from our first ever cinema screenings of this. This isn't like previous episodes where this is more of a looser, reactionary conversation. What's your relationship to 1961's film?
I haven't seen it properly in so long, so I'm kind of plucking like little bits from my brain. I didn't have like a very strong attachment to it. It was more falling in love with the music, the original Broadway cast and like revival casts. Because I think it just kind of like, I mean, the visual obviously really helps, but it's that kind of like music that just like takes you somewhere wherever.
We're talking about, it's back to that vacuum thing I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If this is the only film that's ever existed, you're going to also go, Jesus Christ, this is some of the best music I've ever heard. That's just undeniable. That's why I talk about it as the best musical of all time, because it just fundamentally is some of the most beautiful music ever written. When you look at that original collaboration of Arthur Lawrence, Stephen Sondheim, Leonard Bernstein, and Jerome Robbins, that's like, I think
that's a dream team.
It's obscene the amount of talent just in one room. I mean, I don't know how that movie hasn't been made yet. Maybe there's not enough writing on it, or maybe there's not enough chronicling. But and maybe it's too hard to capture those four people in one film. But that's the One Night in Miami movie I want to see. Those four. But yes, I'm undeniably a huge fan of the 1961 film. However, I wanted to really, really, really give this film as big as a chance as I could. I haven't watched that film since I watched it in lockdown, first ever lockdown 2 years ago, or whatever it's been. 2 years or 20, I have no idea anymore. But I intentionally didn't rewatch it. I've not listened to the music in a long time to give it as much of a chance as I possibly could. And I definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed it tremendously a lot. I, of course, love the music. I love the story. And it's one of those fundamental stories that gets you every single time. That being said, we'll get to it later. It didn't make me cry. This is the first time I haven't cried at a West Side Story.
I was really surprised at myself as well, because I think they were acting their asses off. Like, I appreciated every choice, but
some
I don't
people
know.
were.
I think I was too caught up in, wow, they're doing such a good job, this looked great, to really be swept up in it. And I think the end kind of
dropped the ball.
Minutes. Yeah, it was very long, and like they had these really big laborious shots, and Ansel Elgort was falling over himself.
Oh my God. It's one of those things where, like, how do you get this wrong? Like,
no, yeah.
Again, comparison is fruitless in some ways, but also when you're talking about a remake, it's one of the only form of criticism that matters, or else why are you making this film in the first place? But Richard Beymer running around those streets and bellowing Maria, I also thought it was a bad choice to have him just be walking around the corner. Again, it makes more sense that Maria's going to be there. Again, that makes more sense that they end up happening to see each other. But I much prefer, it goes on for a couple of minutes in the original film of Richard Beymer running around these streets, bellowing Maria, just bellowing. And then it's and then the silence. And then he sees Maria through the gate. And like, that's just one of those all-time moments for me. Whereas this, they kind of just, all these close-ups. And then another thing that I really disliked, the use of music in that final monologue. The use of, deafening silence almost in the original film. And in every stage production that's ever occurred of West Side. I mean, that I can't make that bold comment. There are many productions that have happened. But in the original production and most productions, that's dead silent. And we just have Maria and those quivering words that Tony Kushner didn't even need to change a punctuation on. He did a lot of great rewriting in this. But that monologue by Arthur Lawrence, which was originally going to be a song, but then it works just so much more powerful. This is the moment of silence.
Yeah, and I found that there were some moments that maybe needed a little bit more underscoring. But definitely that end one wasn't one of them.
there's no other way to go about this. Let's also talk about this. We haven't mentioned one big name yet. We just mentioned Tony Kushner, obviously, just to put it plainly, one of the finest writers, one of the finest writers of the modern millennium. And as recently not recently, it's been a big part of his career, has worked in adaptation an awful lot. And this is just another fine example of a great adaptation. And when we're talking about the changes that have been made, as you've said, I think if we're going to celebrate one person, it should be him. I think the screenplay is very, very, very well done and very well handled, and all the changes are largely in the dialogue, because obviously you can't change these songs. So a lot of the changes and the modernizations, let's say, even though it is of course still say in 1958, come in the dialogue scenes, which can be played around with a bit more because they're not as iconic. Although Arthur Lawrence's book is iconic and is legendary in its own way, it's easier for people to play around with. The films are, sorry, that's what I was going to say. So let's talk about the quote unquote biggest name in all of this, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
I think this sounds stupid. I think we take Steven Spielberg for granted nowadays. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think when people talk about Steven Spielberg, they go, oh yeah, one of the greatest directors of all time. And then they talk about Jaws, which is his greatest film still, I think, unequivocally. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jurassic Park. And then you say, yeah, and Schindler's List is really good. I'll never watch it again, but Schindler's List is really good. And then people say like, oh, I like Catch Me If You Can. You like Catch Me If You Can. It was one of your 3 picks. And I like Catch Me If You Can a lot. But then you look at these past, let's just look at his past films. I want to say from Catch Me If You Can onwards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Catch Me If You Can is 2002. The Terminal, no. War of the Worlds, no.
What do you mean, no?
Wait, are you reacting to War of the Worlds or The Terminal?
The Terminal.
Terminal's fine.
I liked it.
Munich, fine. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, bad. Adventures of Tintin, surprisingly great. Warhorse, Lincoln, British Spies, The PFG, The Post, Ready Player One, West Side Story. Now, I think this has been boldly proclaimed as Spielberg's return to excellence. I know there are many defenders of movies, as you've just said, The Terminal. There are many defenders of Lincoln even. And Ava Robinson, previous and future guest, is, I think, the only person on the world who defends The Post. She even has a poster of The Post,
Wow.
which when she told me, I thought was a joke. And then it's not. It's
the only one ever printed.
Yeah, I was going to say, ripped from the hands of the cinema bin. Steven Spielberg's never made a musical, and I think this is a very, very well done musical. Musicals on film are a very hard thing to do.
I agree, and I think I've seen a lot of. I mean, I'm, same camp as you. My Marvel is musicals, the Sondheim cinematic universe, if you will.
The Sondheim cinematic universe, which only has, as of today, one good film in it.
Well, this is what I mean, because I usually, I don't know what it is. I don't usually get along with movie adaptations because I feel like they struggle to kind of toe the line between like being really authentic and, taking themselves seriously and also having the liberty to burst into song. And I feel like this is one of the few movies that has executed it brilliantly. Like it didn't feel forced at any point. But I mean, it was interesting because I had a friend come with me who'd never seen the show, never even knew the plot. So it was interesting to see his take on it and like whether it translated the same, because obviously I know all the music, I knew what was coming up virtually next.
And for us, part of the, not joy, part of the tragedy of the thing is that we're watching a tragedy now. I can't even imagine him watching this as a surprise ending.
Oh, he was
Like,
shell-shocked. I felt quite bad.
The biggest point I cry when I'm normally watching it is the vows, is One Hand, One Heart, when they bring in that soft underscoring, and it is literally the vows of death. It's like Godfather Part 2, it's the kiss of death.
I wanted to ask you about that scene as well later on.
Well, we'll talk about that.
We'll
talk about. Well, anyway, we'll talk. We'll keep in broad strokes, and then we'll go number by number. Yes, and what was his reaction?
I mean, again, it was very early doors reactionary, but he seemed to really be on board with it all the way through. I mean, he's seen enough of my shitty amateur shows to be kind of, he knows the drill by now. But yeah, I think he felt that it was smooth enough that it didn't feel like completely out of place.
1961 is this weird thing of, it's 1961, so we're in the middle of your Oklahomas and your big screen adaptations of Rodgers and Hammerstein, which frequently, Carousel probably the biggest example of this, do a lot of take the camera back wide shots. That's the way that they made a lot of those old Hollywood, even Singing in the Rain, apart from the Dance 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 sequence, does a lot of just wide shots and just plays it like, well, I mean, this is a big over exaggeration, but plays it like an NT Live. We are just filming these numbers. And then 1961's West Side Story comes along, and it has some of that, but also has, I mean, famously, they had to bring Robert Wise in because Jerome Robbins was like, he thought he was Orson Welles. And he was like, I need 20 cameras. And and you needed Robert Wise to come in and calm down, Jerome, calm down. And there was a lot of debates whether who was the director anyway. But, and I think that Spielberg has that, where a couple of moments we do sort of stand back and see this choreography, which we'll also talk about. Whereas, I don't know. I have a lot, right. I think we need to stop talking in broad strokes and go scene by scene, because fundamentally, and along the way, we'll talk about cast. That's how we'll do this. Why don't you have it? There we go, musical numbers. Okay, so the prologue starts. The whistle was really quiet, and I didn't like that. It needs to be louder. But anyway, that's a minor note.
Fix it in post.
Then it was like, I don't know whether it was just how close we were to the screen or the IMAX of it. My mum literally said out loud, I feel sick. I feel sick. This was swooping.
These roving drone shots, yeah. Enough to give a lot of the middle-aged ones vertigo. And
it was very good. I thought it's an interesting choice to set this in decay.
Yeah, no, I really like that, the whole slum clearance thing, and like, they're fighting for turf that doesn't really exist.
Won't exist anymore. Yeah. And then from the off, we're like, okay. And there's a good visual language, throwing the paint cans on the beats. There's a lot of, that's clearly one of the Spielbergianisms that he's gone for, is just making it on the beat. Dun, dun.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to applaud like the technical precision of it all. Like, it's just great to watch.
I'd like to see him do another musical.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would have to be something on that kind of similar epic scale.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. That's the end of that. I'm going to talk about this now. So let's talk about the choreography. So this isn't the Jerome Robbins choreography. This is Justin Peck. However, it's Justin Peck kind of just doing the Jerome Robbins choreography.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Like they do the which I've also decided maybe what I have my wife walk down the aisle to. If she likes West Side Story, if not, then I'm not going to.
She don't get a choice. That's right.
This is what we're dancing. You have to
at every point.
Okay, maybe not. But she has to be quick though, because we can't get before we go into a salsa. But anyway, they just reuse things. So if you're going to Krupke aside, which they make they make entirely their own, but also they don't. But why not just use the Jerome Robbins choreography? I don't get it.
I mean, I feel like they had to throw in a little bit of like spice to it, and I think stuff that occupies that wider space, as we were saying, because it's not. I mean, it's partly in the streets and then partly, through this massive rubble. So I think we need to get the sense of scale with the moves that they were doing, but also then have them transition to like weaving in amongst like a lot of people. I don't know. I enjoyed the nods to the original, but I think I needed to feel like I wasn't watching a carbon copy. So I think they did that well. Yeah,
that's the thing with nods, and I keep finding this now as no movie is original anymore, and everything is just oh great, they're in this, how exciting. And that's the only good thing about your movie, that you manage to get people's schedules together. Oh wow, three people, wow. Imagine that being the only good thing in your movie. You get that on a Graham Norton couch anyway. But yeah, I another thing I was going to say, there was a lot more real fighting in this, which worked and was very visceral, but then made it more ridiculous when suddenly they were dancing. If they're dancing the entire time, then you buy into it, and that is the world that you are watching. That's what, for me, that's what the prologue has always served. 15 minutes, more or less entirely of dance, and you go, okay, this is the world we're in. Whereas if they're dancing and then they just start wailing into one of the sharks and they're just fully beating him up, then the next time in Cool, when Riff suddenly goes, cool.
That is the only moment that I was taken out of it and I laughed. That was the only moment for me. Other than that, I got the sense. The only thing I can compare it to is like Bridge to Terabithia, where you see what they see, but then you also see through the third party lens. And so that was that for me. It was kind of like a break from reality, and you had that kind of magical realism of like the dance, and you also had what the standard like civilian or police officer would witness and rush to stop. So I think I liked the mix, but yeah, I agree that one little riff solo did not do it for me.
But again, they need to telegraph that a bit more, because they do that exact fantasy idea very well, I thought, with the Under the Bleachers, with the and then suddenly we cut and there's all these balls and there's all these like hockey sticks and we're back in a shitty bleachers. So if you're going to do that, at least telegraph it a bit more, I feel. If we are going in and out of this world of fantasy, show me. Yeah, so the prologue, I think that was a problem for me, the lack of dancing. I think most of the prologue in this version was just them running about. And this is the Jet song as well. Most of it is just them turning corners. And it's like, wow, look at this, we've recreated the 50s. And it felt a lot more real than some of those original trailers looked. I was quite worried when I first saw those original trailers. It looked kind of CGI on the outskirts, and it still does, but it felt a lot more real than what I first prospected.
Yeah.
So then we get, as we talked about, La Borinquena. Well, I can see what this is now. It's the Puerto Rican national anthem. No, it isn't. Yeah, the Puerto Rican national anthem. Okay, so that's what they're singing. Again, which works.
Written specifically for the movie.
Very Casablanca, very Le Vivant, and then everybody cries and they order the national anthem and everybody claps. And I think if we're going to give the film a big thumbs up, it's the way it brought in the outside world, in some worse ways, which we'll talk about in Maria, but really brought in the outside world and people reacting, and also just made. I mean, I'm not saying that they were, allies in the first film, because they're obviously not, but it was just like, no, the Jets are fully racist and they hate everybody.
Yeah, I think that was an important thing to showcase. I mean, we knew fundamentally, we knew, but like again, I think with the original, you had too much of that like jet perspective. And I don't know, maybe you might disagree. I think the national anthem could have come a little bit later. It felt a little bit premature, but I understand the point that they were trying to make with it. You know, of they are the other, and they're showing, you know, that they are proud and have just as much right to be here. But then it's also the other side of the coin is like instilling that fear of otherness.
I think it's
into the Jets from the get-go.
Yeah.
You know, is it Lieutenant Trank's whole monologue about like, you know, they're coming in droves, like they're gonna be here, and then
just help me, help you.
Yeah, like I understood that side of it, but I think maybe if the singing had come later on, we would have really, having already got a sense of who they were, it would have impacted us a bit more.
I think it's what I sort of talked about earlier with America against Krupke, which is, I think it's just there as a literal mirroring of the Jet song, which we're going to have next.
Yeah.
But I completely see what you want about. I could maybe see a reprise, a more heartfelt reprise, after some more racism later. You know, just a little bit of racism, and then they
just a smash of racism,
and then another reprise. Yeah, and then we meet Lieutenant Schrank, played by Corey Stoll. And again, I think what we were talking about with the Jets just outwardly being racist, and then they play a lot with that with the character of Riff, where understandable is a big word, but they do a very good job of explaining entirely where he's coming from, and Tony defending him in ways that are complex and are a grey area that are interesting to view. I think there's a version of this, you know, 2021 woke mind, you know, what people are worried about or whatever, where they go, oh, they made everybody evil. Oh, so what? A jet can't be a jet anymore. Whereas they made a very interesting with Riff's monologues and the way that Riff talks about things.
Oh yeah,
these are the things that we hear all the time of. No, I'm not racist. I've never had a life.
Yeah,
I've never had a life.
It wouldn't be interesting if you didn't have that perspective at all. And you know, it's an insight into what was, you know, the popular view, like the kind of hive mind of like working class whites feeling that their opportunities were somehow being taken away from them, and that anger being kind of misdirected into the first, you know, people that they could find. And so
until the next ones arrive, because like they ever talk about, I can't remember who says it, but they talk about how, you know, it was the Italians and it was the blacks, and they sort of mention this, the Irish, and then but as we see with when they're buying the drug scene, give it 20 years and the blacks and the Irish are your friends. So it's one of those things of it's just somebody new, and it's just somebody other. It's just somebody to blame. And, you know, all I want to say is thank God that these aren't attitudes that people still have now. I think it's so nice that
it's a real dystopia back then.
This movie really works as a exemplification of that time, and has no bearing on
bearing on the now.
No bearing on the now at all. So then we get the Jet song with Riff. Let's talk about Riff, played by Mike Faced.
Yeah. I was initially apprehensive because I felt like Riff needed to seem a little bit more menacing and like kind of command a little bit more
My grandma
authority.
Didn't like him. Yeah, she immediately said, what was his name in the first one? And I said, Russ Tamblyn. And she went, oh yeah, Russ Tamblyn. Yeah, Russ Tamblyn. So I think my grandma was trying to say that she had the hots for Russ Tamblyn.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, that was my initial thoughts. But then obviously you think, you know, Riff is technically the second in command, the right-hand man. And so he's taking over this mantle that maybe he's not entirely ready for. And so I think I was then taken with Mike Face's acting, and he did a bloody convincing job of it.
Oh no, he's a
I
very
just
good
don't know if
talented
I don't know
actor.
if he would have been my first choice. I can't think of who I would replace him with either.
I think it's very clear that physically and I'm getting a bit of a rash. There's a note for your audience. I think, like, physically, he's very, very different from Tony, and he's scrawny, quote unquote. He's smaller, and they didn't really address that in any way of sort of him feeling little man complex is a big thing to throw around, but that sort of thing of like, I have to prove myself. He's a bit more scrappier, and even with the relationship with I want to call her Grisabella, but that's not a name. It's
Graziella.
Graziella. Yeah, and that sort of relationship. Yeah. I feel like the entire time, whoever was playing Graziella was on the moment of singing a song. And she was like, "Can I have a song now?" No.
Yeah, it felt like she was like vying for her own Oscar moment every time she was on screen.
Also,
it was annoying.
That was Maddie Ziegler, wasn't it?
Yeah, as the friend who I could not for the life of me remember her name.
Maddie Ziegler?
No, so she wasn't Graziella, she was the other one.
The other one. You can give yourself a break, Rhian. Nobody knows. Nobody knows that woman's name, and that's just a problem with the original text. Again, Velma. Yes, no, that it does ring a bell actually. And also, yeah, if we're doing this 2021 version where we're going to sort all the wrongs, why not give them something to do?
Oh, like, see, I had a big point about this. Shall I say it now?
Yeah, why not?
So I feel like, as the representative white woman, I'm allowed to say this. You don't have to redeem us all. You don't. The scene where Anita comes back to Docks.
I was going to say this. Everybody's a hero
by the Jets. I did not care at all for the fact that the women were there, suddenly had a change of heart, were banging down the door, being like, "Don't hurt her, don't hurt her," because.
And anybody's too. Where did anybody's go? Leave. What?
I mean, that I felt was enough. But, the kind of female presenting perspective to be like, I know what these guys are like. I'm just warning you now. I feel like if they wanted to do anything that was like a nod to kind of female, quote unquote, solidarity, they could have just done that. But the fact that you had Grazie and Velma suddenly playing the hero or the ally, it didn't serve the purpose that they thought that it would.
Yeah, it just wasn't seeded. If you want to seed it of like, I'm not asking for violence against women on screen, but like if you want to seed it a little bit, have Riff like hit her on the ass or something. Show that they have seen this violence before. Show that they're kind of used to it. Again, like we're talking about, this is the time. If you're going to sanitize some things, don't sanitize it all. They probably didn't have a fantastic relationship with those women.
Yeah, or just not have them in that moment at all. Have them not witness it if you really don't want to like villainize them any further.
Or make their characters more interesting. I'm not saying cheering on from the sidelines, but
kind of passive bystanders.
Show their silence. Yeah, show their terrified silence. Oh,
that is the reality.
I have to stay silent, or else this is me.
Yeah, that is the reality of the time, and also, white women fragility was so like such a force of evil. Like they could cause like in some cases more destruction than if a white man was like calling the shots. And so I think they kind of glossed over that in an attempt to kind of like glorify or like redeem the women in the story, and I just didn't think it was necessary.
And also, if you're going to do that, have a moment when Anita like stumbles out, have them look or be or have something outside. I'm not asking for a full 5-minute scene, but have a look or have something of them. Again, we're going back to that silence would be better.
Guilty, regretful. All
something
valid things to explore, just not the whole sequence of oh, I really did try to help you.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what side of the fence are you on then?
And also, this is 5 minutes after she's immediately jumped back to, let me be with Tony now. Tony loved me once. He don't want to see you. You know, like, what are we doing? Are we making this? Are we making this a really agent character? Are we making her have loads of agency, or are we having her be a pass around for these jets? What are we doing?
She's gone from Tony loved me once immediately to stop speaking Spanish in here to Anita. So I was like, well, I'm immediately not interested in her because she's flip-flopping.
I think when you talk about the original musical being from the Jets' perspective, which is of course true, I think it can't be underestimated how provocative and controversial and interesting it is to then have your quote-unquote good guys assault a woman in the final scene. And also, you know, we're talking about things that have aged badly. In 1961, they weren't presenting it as them doing the right thing to Anita. Of course they weren't. They were presenting it as, this is another aspect of this gangland violence that's occurring. So I think even in 1961, they were of the right mind of showing, of presenting that scene. And that's just to, as you're talking about redeeming, I think it's an interesting idea to just, and it's the original's idea anyway, but it's to just really make these people irredeemable. And if anything, and I understood why they didn't do it in 1961, because it's giving people the chance to back up all of their racist ideals. But if you're going to now in 2021 with a wider lens of things, why not make the Sharks a little bit more irredeemable in points as well?
I don't know. I think in terms of showing that they all got caught up in the gang violence and like the fight for reclaiming their territory, I think I felt like they showed that and they did that justice. But then also they did well to show kind of the anxious like retreat after the rumble of, okay, how important is all of this to us? Is it more important to have family and community rather than, you know, be fighting these other guys? And I think, well, Riff says it, or somebody says it, that the Sharks have homes, they have family, they have these like steadfast connections with each other outside of the Sharks, as in like their own flesh and blood, whereas the Jets don't have that same sort of familial tie. So like each other is all they know, and what the only thing they do with each other is go out and like kick rock, beat each other up. So I feel like you could have easily had more sequences of the Sharks being like unforgiving and brutalizing the Jets, but I think it pulled back to the point that somebody made about, you know, the stakes are different, not necessarily better or worse for them, just different. And so they kind of, after the whole funeral for Bernardo, they learned to back off a little bit. But then, you know, you've also got the character of Chino, who doesn't back off, and who, you know, kind of crosses to the dark side of, I'm going to avenge my friend. And so I think that maybe is what you're kind of looking for, just through this one central person.
But then, yes, he nice little, just cleaner. I mean, it is there in the original thing, but it's just cleaner here of him going dark, and again gives him more agency with the gun, and he's not getting revenge for Maria. That's kind of how they play it in the original show, is that he's got to sort of been, for lack of a better way, cooked or whatever. He's angry at this Tony for stealing Maria from him. They don't really play it as a revenge for Bernardo and I am the new king of the Sharks, which I believe is
I much prefer this version.
Yeah, definitely. And then also you have the final payoff of that with just him immediately surrendering, which I thought was handled very well as well. So then our next song is Something's Coming, where we meet Tony and Rita Moreno, which we'll talk about a lot later, who my mum thought was Frenchie from Greece. And I said, she said, that's the woman from Greece. And I said, no, that's Academy Award winning actress Rita Moreno, who originally played Anita. And she went, okay. So Tony.
Yeah. Had my reservations again.
Oh, go on.
You know, ethically, morally. But we won't get into it in full. I was pleased with the performance that he delivered, especially I think Something's Coming was probably his strongest, or one of his strongest moments, vocally. Like he kind of held his own.
Yeah, he definitely hits, I think, all the notes.
He hits all the notes, you know, fair play to him.
That can be said.
No, I think he has a very nice kind of light and dark balance. Like I think he knows how to act through song and kind of take a lot of care with that, like kind of rubato and like dragging it about while still kind of staying true to the score, which is very technically like precise. So I was happy. I think visually, I think I would have liked to see more of him like exploring the city rather than just being in docks and being like, yeah, I tell you, something's coming.
Singing to Rita Moreno. I'll be honest, I didn't much care for him, and I thought he got worse as it went on.
I do think he fell off towards the end. Because I really did try. I tried to separate the character from the actor and just appreciate, you know, the choices he was making in the moment. But even then, it was a bit like I didn't really get a sense of like authentic kind of connection with the people he was talking to. Yeah. Maybe because of the shots as well. Like a lot of them are very like tight, close-up shots where I was like, okay, this just feels like the Ansel show. Like I am reacting to something, but you didn't really get a sense on his face of what it was he was reacting to.
I thought he sung absolutely fine. That's true. He sung absolutely fine. For me, it was in performance. I'm afraid I have to disagree with Something's Coming. And Maria also. There was this like boundless, you know, joyous childhood first crush quality that they were clearly going for. Just didn't really pay off for me.
I think as well, I don't know how much training he has in terms of dance. And like I know Tony doesn't really need as much like prowess in comparison to the rest of the Jets. I felt like just the way they kind of held themselves, that difference was like a lot more stark, especially in the film. It was
very stark and cool, which for some reason they gave to him. And give this guy another song. Fucking hell.
Just have him run about a little bit on a drum.
Yeah, and do one spin. I'm sorry. He was the weak link for me, unfortunately. I think he sung absolutely fine. I thought his chemistry with Rachel Ziegler was quite nice. I thought I believed in the romance. I believed in the love. But also, I don't know what it was. Something's Coming was fine. And we'll talk about the dance at the gym in a moment. But then for me, it was Maria. And I also think the film wasn't on his side. I don't know what it is. I think the way that it was chose to be made in this version with, you know, the guy cleaning turning on the basketball lights at night, you know, doing that funny little smirk at him. It's like, the film doesn't work if you don't give in to this romance and if you don't give in to this absolute love. If you make fun of Tony's absolute adoration and if you make fun of Maria's absolute love, then why should
It
we?
loses
Why should
it.
we
Yeah.
care?
It's like, I mean, there's a lot of moments where it does that because they're trying to make it still palatable for a 2021 audience.
And it's like, ha ha
And
ha,
it's
they've
like,
fallen in love after one day.
it's like, well,
that's the film.
don't pull at that thread because then you've got no story. Like, we know that it's unrealistic, but also they're kids, and like you say, it's you've got to give into the romance. And so I think there were moments where they tried to work around things, and I think shot themselves in the foot a little bit.
Yeah, and then when it came to, I think from Maria onwards, actually, no, actually, Tonight was very good. I thought they both did Tonight excellently. Tonight was wonderful, and we'll talk about Rachel Ziegler in a moment. But staying on with Tony, I think from that point onwards, I thought Cool was pretty dreadful. Actually, I thought Cool was pretty bad, and Cool is probably one of my favorite numbers in the original film. I think it's sensational.
It did not keep my attention.
It was just
for the whole time.
Don't know why they put it there. I don't know why they gave it to Tony. I have no idea why any of these decisions were made.
I think it made sense to give it to Tony, but also, like you say, there just wasn't enough of a payoff.
And also, yeah, you're playing around with this gun. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, you've got this whole big scene of this is the joy, this is the seriousness of the gun. And then it immediately cuts them playing around. Very funny, very funny. Not very funny, very dark and very powerful. That they're playing around like kids with this toy. Well, no, that's not a toy like it's a toy.
Which I think you could argue that Cool demonstrates exactly that. So you either keep Cool in, or you just have that scene where they're all like messing about with it, and have a bit of a kind of dialogue exchange with Tony, like, I'm warning you, don't do this.
Or have Cool where
both.
they have it in the film, which is after the rumble with the jets coming back together before docks.
So yeah, I don't know. I think they wanted to have their cake and eat it a little bit. Some moments.
It's like, yeah, we're going to make a 2021 version, and everything's going to be quote unquote politically correct, or at least examined more, and we're going to explore everything, and everything's going to be really well handled. But then you just have fundamental, if you're going to focus on political issues rather than solving plot issues, why bother? Let's talk about Maria. Let's talk about Rachel Ziegler. You're a bit more of a modern Broadway stan and all that. I remember last year, I think it was the trailer or some news or something, and you were talking about I love Rachel Ziegler. And at that point, I didn't know this name or anything.
So as a chronically online person, I kind of followed her ascension to fame and like being in the public eye, because she went viral with a singing video. And sort of got she sang Shallow from A Star Is Born, just in an empty auditorium, posted it to Twitter. It did some incredible numbers, and she's very prominent in her local theatre scene, where she grew up. So she'd always been like one to watch out for. But I think seeing her kind of become like the nation's sweetheart was just really nice to see, because you get a sense that she's very genuine, and like she just genuinely loves what she does. I think she's kind of like the poster girl for like theatre kids everywhere. Like you can make it with a bit of gumption. I mean, she is insanely talented to boot.
Yes. I think the joyous ending of this story is that she's good.
Yes.
And that she's good in this.
And the other thing is she could have easily played kind of like the shrinking Violet, like very chaste, innocent version of Maria that we know quite well. But to have her be this kind of a bit more feisty, outspoken Maria, she really rose to that as well.
Yeah.
And I think it gave her a lot of agency that was like believable. I loved every moment that we were kind of following her like the whole stretch where she's stayed up all night, slept in her clothes, and she's like trying to look disheveled, like just like
delightful.
an honest picture of like a teenage girl.
Yes, I think I don't want to sound like I'm infantilizing her, but I think it was a different kind of chaste version of Maria that we've seen, where it's a bit more childish. Again, I don't want to sound infantilizing, but that thing of when she first kisses him and this is what I've been, this is the sort of thing I've seen. This is what I've seen Bernardo and Anita do every night. I want to get my rocks off, that sort of
taking
thing.
The lead, like that's all that she knows.
And again, as you say, with the woman taking the lead, she's in a house with Anita. Obviously, Bernardo, they have an incredible relationship, but Anita's a very vivacious woman. Even in church now, she's singing about.
Oh my God!
An insane choice that we're going to talk about later.
I know, yeah.
But
yeah, I really loved what she brought to it, and I think what we were saying about making the romance believable. I really got a sense of that with her more so than I think I did from Ansel Elgort. Maybe because of his age, or because of like the way he was very straight-laced, playing like the naturalism of it a lot, and it almost seemed to kind of contradict the words he was given, like I'm in this for the long haul. Like I don't know, I think she definitely hit the mark for me in terms of selling just the wonderment and the magic of like this little bubble that they've created.
I think it's what you're saying, and again, hard to separate the thing of the thing of let's call it that, the thing of which is a one-act play that we are both writing. The thing of we talked about tonight, which was sensation. Let's talk about Bernardo and Anita. Anita, fundamentally, when it comes to just all-time supporting roles that aren't really supporting, but supporting roles, it's just one of the best of all time. You get the comedy, you get the feistiness, you get the sexiness, you get the horror, you get the dramatic scenes, you get the sad scenes. It's just one of those incredible roles that you can't really do wrong in. But that's not to underestimate how excellent Ariana DeBose was in this film.
Oh, absolutely. Like again, there's a lot of moments where Anita kind of takes the sideline and is like exclusively, the voice of reason, or the kind of oppressive force that's like kind of keeping Tony and Maria from their love. But it got to the point where leading up to A Boy Like That, I was 100% invested in her journey, to the point where I was kind of like, Maria, just get out of shot. Like, this isn't about you at this point. Like, just seeing, like, just absolutely gut-wrenching performance, and seeing everything that is going into like the advice that she's giving Maria, and it just brought like a whole new color to it of she's on her own now.
And also, I think one of the biggest, I guess, plot problems with the show is after the assault, when she declares that Chino's killed Maria. And for the first time in a version, I've kind of understood that moment. Every time I've always just passed it off as she's devastated, she's traumatized, she's angry. This is her getting back. Yeah. Whereas in this, it kind of felt more so of I'm protecting her.
Yeah. No, I agree. I feel like
Tony is one of these, which means
rather than it being like a retaliation. I never like that. Hadn't clicked for me until you just said it, but definitely felt like, okay, she's resigned herself to being, completely un-Americanized. Because I mean, she represents so much of like the trying to be like the all-American girl in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then realizes
she has America.
that is impossible. Like that, I will never do that. I'm gonna just slink back to the shadows and like my one corner of the city, if I can even stay. And so I think that was like a really powerful moment. And yeah, like you say, she's protecting herself, she's protecting Maria, who from these people who now she's not ever going to see as any different.
So we're talking about Anita. Let's talk about Bernardo. I had his name. 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 I had his name.
David
His name
Alvarez.
is David Alvarez. You beat me to it. Which Broadway kid is this guy? I think it can't be underestimated to what extent this movie seriously is bettered by the choice to have Broadway stars.
Oh yeah, I mean, people joked in the previews about playing Spot That Newsy in the beginning sequence, but I mean, there was no other way around it. Like having these incredibly slick triple threat performers, you know, you needed them for those big demanding numbers. And I think there were only a few times when I thought, oh, this is taking me out a little bit. So for example, seeing Brian Darcy as Krupke.
Especially
feel
when he
so bad
bursts
'cause
through the doors.
He's got such an illustrious career, but I can only ever see him as Shrek.
Great big beautiful world. Anytime he come on, he should have. Yeah, Corey Stoll. Has Corey Stoll done theatre? I bet you anybody. Corey Stoll's done like stage. Oh, I bet he's done some like big like angry play.
Mm-hmm.
He was Marco in a production of A View from the Bridge.
Ah.
See that? He was Iago in Shakespeare in the Park. This was recent. He was Macbeth. He was Iago. He wasn't Othello. He was he's done a lot of Shakespeare, so he's into that, I guess. He was also in Scenes from a Marriage recently, and he was very good in The Many Saints of Newark and First Man, where he played Buzz Aldrin, one of the best movies that nobody has seen. Just nobody. Why is nobody watching that great I thought it said Mildred Pierce. It says Michael Prince, and obviously he's great in Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris. I thought Corey Stoll did a very good job, and I thought Brian Darcy James did do a very good job. Kind of played it a bit more real than wacky.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like you had to with something of this nature, and I mean, if he had a song of his own, I felt like he could have played up to it a little bit more, but
yeah,
I think he needed to be.
It's not
the kind of
easy
straight
on
laced.
these old streets.
No one needs the old man's act to lull.
One of the funniest videos of all time. The
Character's
song,
Welcome
yes,
sketch,
that's
the
very,
song that
very
nobody
funny.
cares about. Yeah, brilliant.
Oh look, that woman sleeping. Very, very good. Even though they do steal the
So
joke
well done.
from the it's the Will Ferrell, Jack Black. Did you know that mute? Oh yeah, they're talking about the Oscar speech, and they go, your time is through, you're boring. Look at Catherine Zeta-Jones, she's snoring. And Michael has no idea what's happening. Did they just say your name? Brian Darcy James, Corey Stoll. Who else were we? Oh, we didn't actually talk about David Alvarez. Just very, very good. I don't think there's much different from the George Chakiris performance, other than the fact that he's not a white guy. They
really
brought in the boxing element, and then sort of a thing that didn't really work for me, because you bring in that he's a world-class boxer, and then fucking Tony.
Little noodle-armed Hansel Elgort, just like
what? I can believe that Tony nearly beat to death a guy in a fight, which I thought was an interesting change, and that's why he doesn't want to be in the Jets anymore. I thought that was an interesting and cool
plot point. Yeah, because I mean, it again, it's about like the redemption, like who deserves it, who doesn't. Like Tony's slate is as black as any of the Jets. Like he's not the sole dreamer who doesn't agree with what they're doing but goes around with them anyway. Like, he is entrenched in the violence, and I think that often does get overlooked. But having this kind of element of like, he's gone to prison, he's seen the error of his ways, he's come out clean. Like, that I think is a realistic choice, rather than something somewhere along the way he's kind of had this change of conscience and like is looking for his higher purpose. I think you would only really get that once you're taken out of the environment that you're in and you have a little bit of space and clarity, which again, this made perfect sense. I think on the whole, Tony always looks a little bit too kind of like prissy. So I guess having that fight sequence worked.
It worked. It just wasn't believable, because if Bernardo's a world-class boxer, like, I can believe that a dirty brawl.
World-class though? Is that specified, or is he just
no, not world-class. I'm just throwing that about. He's a very, very good boxer though.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know. I know I made a joke about his noodle arms, but I feel like with enough kind of adrenaline and anger, and I mean, he fucking wails on him. Like, Bernardo wails on him like a good few times in the beginning, and then kind of brings that animalistic like rage out of Tony that you don't see and is only ever before expressed outside of the narrative.
True.
So I don't know.
Let's go back to America. How did you like America in this? It's just America's a sensational number. Just very.
I think this was one of the changes that really, really worked for me, because obviously initially it's kind of sharks being antagonized by jets sometimes. And so it was, I think when we were talking about, it being more centered in like the PR experience, it was more helpful for it to be kind of a self-deprecating thing of, these are the opportunities presented to us, they're shit because of the circumstances we're in.
I don't understand what you mean that's a change. That's always the way it is.
Is it?
Yeah, it's always Bernardo. Yeah, it's always Bernardo.
Is it always like shark on shark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shark and shark action. Yeah, that's always the way. Yeah, no, that's always the way it is.
Do you know what it is? I'm thinking of Glee. When Glee does it.
That's a bad decision.
Oh, you got the jet saying it to the sharks. Well, it was a great
Glee
consistency.
Who did everybody play in Glee?
Oh, well,
was it just one song, or was it? Did they?
They did the whole.
I don't need to ask who played Tony Maria.
Canonically, they did the whole show. It was Blaine actually was Tony.
What?
Rachel Berry was Maria. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Finn wasn't in it.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he took a back seat.
Oh, so he wasn't dead?
No, he wasn't dead.
Oh right, I was going to say.
He was like, I'm not doing theater.
Oh, come on. Anyway, okay, good cast. That's good casting. Well, not merit, no.
But they had all the people of color and Rory Flanagan or whatever his fucking name was.
Which one's Rory?
The Irish exchange student. They were the sharks, and they make a joke about his awful Puerto Rican accent. And they do the with our mouths open, our hearts open, and our
Okay, that's a pretty funny joke.
He's really got to work on that accent.
If they made jokes about the fact that none of them were Puerto Rican, and they made that joke, I'm perfectly fine with that episode still. Then,
I mean, yeah, it's completely like not,
because let's just say it as it is. Across the world, there are so many. Like, how many bloody amateur productions have you seen, or school productions with the fake tan and with the
I was almost in one.
I
was almost in one, and I thank my lucky stars that did not go ahead.
Yeah.
But it's this echo chamber of like, this is fine because our director has said it's fine, and we're just kids that want to sing some really good songs. And there's still this, like, you still get kind of mums and theatre goers in comment sections being like, well, you know, why can't we just pay homage to the really good music? Like, why should we not be allowed to showcase that?
It's one of those things, isn't it? It's like, it's one of the
there are
greatest music of all
so
time.
many productions that you could do instead, so many, without compromising the integrity of every person involved. I had a point. Oh yeah. After the train wreck, there was Glee West Side Story, which is my favorite episode. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. It is my favorite episode.
Over the Rocky Horror episode with John Stamos.
Oh, that was a train wreck.
Yeah, enjoyably.
But after that, I'm pretty sure Lea Michele was genuinely upset about not being considered for Maria in like real productions.
Oh,
like,
what an icon.
Honest to God.
Well, I mean, we all know how she got her comeuppance. Hello, darling. I think Beanie Feldstein should bow. Who knows if she's going to be good? I have no doubt that she will be. Like everything.
I cannot wait. I love Beanie Feldstein.
And I just think she should bow, take her 5-minute ovation, and then go. You know, like every show I go see now, there's an announcement after, whether it's COVID or whether it's for a charity, and they go, "Hi guys, thank you so much for coming tonight." And I just have one thing to say. Fuck you, Lea Michele. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming back to Broadway. We are still here. And then she walks off.
Thing is, she doesn't need to do that because her whole existence is a fuck you to Lea Michele.
That is true. I mean,
like when I felt kind of bad because when the news came out that she'd got Fanny Bryce, it was like no one was even congratulating her. Like the whole reaction was, Leah's gonna be bloody furious. She's on the phone to Jonathan Groff right now, crying into a pillow. Like it was bad.
Lea, I know I'm the only person who still likes you, but I'm trying to learn my lines from Mindhunter.
Anyway, tangent.
Yes,
I will say what was a change that I know was a change that was good. Having Bernardo feature a little bit more rather than her doing the original, rather than Anita doing like the original few verses to a friend who's kind of the naive, like I would like to go back to the motherland. Because I think it's more kind of like they've got solidarity with each other, but also they are from two different worlds, even within the community. He sees the violence, he sees the discrimination more firsthand, and is a little bit more jaded because of it. And she gets to be the one who's entirely like not naive but entirely hopeful, rather than it being like, oh, she's the cynic about Puerto Rico. It's more like he's the cynic about America, and she is like the voice of optimism. I really like that because it made for a bigger contrast later on where she's just kind of broken down.
And then obviously we have the new final line for her of, I am Puerto Rican. Or maybe I've just bastardized some Spanish there.
She actually said she was going to the shops.
Yeah, I'm going to Puerto Rico. Yeah. Okay, we're two white guys. How did you feel?
I'm glad you brought this up.
How did you feel about no subtitles? Because I get it. And it's an interesting choice. And obviously there is a lot of justification in the text. And it's something that they've done on Broadway before with Lynn working with Stephen, changing. I think they did I Feel Pretty entirely in Spanish, and
they did. And
America as well.
I was kind of disappointed that I Feel Pretty wasn't at least partially in Spanish.
Yeah, if you're going to have at least 30% of the Jets dialogue being unsubtitled Spanish, why not do I Feel Pretty in that?
I think I would have liked to hear that. Because I'd seen the Broadway bootleg, and so I would already kind of adjusted to that kind of slipping in and out. And I think again, like we are advantaged in the fact that we know the gist of the story.
Well, I was going to say this. I remember, like, We know that it's a bit like watching Shakespeare.
Yeah.
In that I can't tell what the hell's happening, but I know what the hell's happening.
But you know what's happening, yeah.
And the big thing was when they're doing the, I guess it's a bit of a dated joke now, but when they do the, especially in the way that they're trying to tell it, if you're not going to have a reaction with anybody's, which we've not talked about the depiction of anybody's yet, but we will, because I thought that was done rather well actually. But it was the joke where they're saying, okay, girls on the outside circle and boys on the outside. And one of the sharks came out and he spoke in Spanish. And I know the joke. Which side are you on? Which circle are you in? Because I know the joke, because I've seen this film a million times and I know the joke. But like, what does your friend think? Unless your friend's a fluent Spanish speaker. Like, and then again, every single time they go, I speak in English, please. So I understand why the choice was made. I just don't know why not subtitle it as well.
I don't know. I think it's something that they could get away with because of, it being 2021 and like how established the show and the movie is. I think it's like you're saying, that the Shakespeare analogy is perfect, because even if you don't quite catch everything, you still get a sense of the scale and the story and the relationships forming between everyone. And I think it kind of exemplifies that like otherness that can either be scary to the Jets or something to totally embrace. And that kind of sense of like patriotism and loyalty to the Sharks and the Shark families. So I don't know, for me, it didn't detract at all. It was like you said, like there were moments where I knew what they were saying. And I think there were moments where it was very carefully designed for you to understand it still. Like there were key words emphasized that you could be like, okay, yeah, that's what they're saying. Like he's calling him stupid. He's saying go over there. And so I think the moments where it was absolutely necessary for the audience to get it, they did it. But there were obviously moments where I think it was nice because you got a sense that they were having like a private conversation, and like this was something that was entirely theirs. Even like as an audience member, it was like, okay, that is your space, that is your conversation. So yeah, I don't know. I think like I say, it didn't detract for me.
It didn't detract for me.
Maybe I think again because it's like it's a knee-jerk like reaction to watching it very fresh. So maybe with a few more watches, we could get more of a grasp on like the little bits of dialogue.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the person who's seeing it for the first time. I'm just thinking of your friend, Rhian.
He just about managed. He got by okay.
So let's talk about the depiction of anybody's leading into Officer Krupke. So usually it's just a girl who's a bit of a tomboy. That's always the way it's been projected. Yeah. Here we have a non-binary performer. I'm going to get the name. 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 Iris Menez.
Ezra Menez.
Oh, is it changed now?
Yeah.
Oh, the Wikipedia. Somebody changed the Wikipedia, everybody.
It's contradictory. They've got multiple articles, but
anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, Ezra Menez. I thought very well done. Thought they had enough dialogue in there, not too forced, as we were sort of talking about with the modernization of the assault scene. There were a couple of moments, like early on in the dance, before the Officer Krupke scene. Every time they sort of acknowledged it, it was always sort of in the background.
Yeah, it got to the point where like it was a little bit annoying that they hadn't spoken yet.
Yeah, like, every single time it cut to them, it was like them looking longingly at the Jets, or in the dance when they're like, "Why are you wearing a suit?" and it's in the background.
And like there was a good moment. I felt like it was building up to something much bigger. And I think like because a lot of the original dialogue would have still been quite fitting from the beginning, like come on guys, like like kind of having that because I think we lost a lot of like anybody's kind of cheeky chappy charm, like
Yeah.
and a sense of their personality.
Sort of made them just a tragic character, which of
Yeah,
course they
it
are
was
because they're a non-binary or a trans person in 1958. But
where there just wasn't that vocabulary for it, and so I appreciated the way they went about it in terms of like describing them, and them describing themselves. But yeah, I think we lost a little bit of that that charm and that persona to make way for like, okay, this is a wider issue, and we're showing you that it's a wider issue. We know, like it was
I think
very.
they just did it very well in the. I think just the Krupke stuff before the Krupke stuff was more than enough, and was handled very well. Even there's a version of this movie that's 20 minutes shorter, where it's enough to see their complete commiseration when they're put on the ladies' desk with the sex worker.
Yeah, exactly. And I think,
yeah,
I don't know whether they were kind of overcompensating to show that, okay, a change has been made and want to be explicit about this. Because I mean, there's so much history of like LGBT rep that just is as covert as possible. And they've gone, oh, there you go, here's a gay person on screen, that's what you wanted. And it's just not, it's not got enough substance at all. So I understand them going kind of in the opposite direction and wanting to be as explicit as possible.
But then of course
it
like, comes again to the issue of would this person say any of this?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, we said like there wasn't the same vocabulary of like self-identifiers. Would they even go as far as to say I'm not a girl?
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I think it was important to have that line in there just to illustrate, okay, this is the story that we're telling. But yeah, I think certain moments we could have done without, not for like, not that they were unsuitable, but just because there were too many of them.
I think we have this whole thing now, and I've talked about it a lot with different projects, even with Bombshell, even which was quite a bad movie, but it's that thing of it's 2021, so we want every trans and non-binary person in our films, and we want every gay person in our films, and we want every woman in our films to be strong and independent characters and be well developed, and so many other things. Then when those are in period films, we also want those things. However, repeatedly just comes completely contradictory to the narrative. I remember Ratched, and like obviously kind of a bit of a colorblind casting in Ratched, but then they're asking you to acknowledge lesbian lesbian oppression with the Cynthia Nixon character. So they're asking, because she's in a sort of mutual relationship with this gay black man. So we're supposed to believe that gay oppression is happening at this time, and so she has to pretend to be in a marriage. But you're not going to acknowledge at all that being in an interracial marriage is just as dangerous at that time. It's that thing of it ends up being contradictory.
It's like, where do you draw the line? And I think the thing you said about wanting your kind of minority characters or like female characters to be really strong and kind of flawless, and I think that kind of misses the point as well. Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about women needing to be seen as really strong and unwavering, because so I'd read something about Little Women, obviously the 2018 adaptation, with Joe's kind of incredible monologue about women can do anything, they're smart, they have minds as well as just hearts, but I'm so lonely. And it became like a phenomenon to like take that clip in isolation, but without the end, without the, I'm so lonely.
Yeah.
And people were saying, well, that just kind of defeats the whole thing, because I think in trying to create like the strong female character,
You lose
people have
dimension.
gone a little bit, yeah, too far with it and made these kind of flawless, like Amazons who can never be vulnerable or weak or emotional, and then you've just lost all the facets of like what a woman is. And I think, you see really good like three-dimensional representations of people, whether that's uh someone in the LGBT community or like someone of a racial minority. You see really good like three-dimensional things, but then people will always complain like, oh, they're not strong or they're not this or that. But it's like, if you want real honest representation, you shouldn't be afraid of showing all of that. And it's like you say, where do you draw the line in terms of how much to acknowledge the limitations of like the wider world when you're doing something that's so ingrained in a certain time period? I think they can definitely still be downtrodden, but still have a sense of personality.
Yeah. Completely agree. And then we talked a little bit about J Officer Krupke. What did you think of that as a number? That to me was, I think, what you're talking about of maybe takes you out of it a little bit. Felt very
a little, but then I think
it's
supposed
the world,
to be,
and
it's supposed to be that kind of like tongue-in-cheek meta commentary about their upbringings and stuff. And I think it needed to be very farcical because that's how it is in the show.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have too much of an issue with it. I didn't have an issue with the placement of it either.
No, me neither. Again, it's better than in the original show where they have to put it in the second act because they were afraid that people wouldn't come back. They do the rumble and then they're like, hey,
hey, this is a bit of fun for you.
It's just terrible.
Yeah, so I think it's that like that kind of runs parallel with America.
Yeah,
for me, because complaining about
sardonic wit.
Yeah,
which leads us to One Hand, One Heart, a beautiful, beautiful song that you said you had issues.
I didn't. I was going to ask you what you thought of it, because obviously it was an example of diminishing the original plot. Obviously, it's not a real lawful marriage. It's them kind of having this pipe dream.
Mm-hmm. They don't have a legal marriage in the first one.
Do they not?
No, it's in the bridal shop.
It's been way too long at this rate.
There's it's the beautiful scene in the bridal shop where because originally they work in a bridal shop as sewers, don't they? Not Anita.
That's it. So they
he
are
goes, and this is your dad.
Yeah.
Oh, I think he would like you. And they dress up and they have all the grooms and
I don't know. Maybe in that case, then they could have like played into it a little bit more, rather than be like. So she starts saying the vows, and he's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, this is what the girls sing at weddings.
That is exactly what I thought of.
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Oh no, that's
so.
Maria.
I guess my question still stands. Do you think that it was like, done?
I thought it was fine
with enough intention, like.
Because that was an example of the opposite of what we've been talking about, where they leant away from the slightly childish thing of they do in the bridal shop of, oh, this is dad. Oh, no, dad will like you. And he asks for the mannequins hand in marriage and all that sort of stuff. And instead they went for him reciting the Spanish and I want to be with you forever. And lovely, funny Rita Moreno. Do you know when I start with coffee?
Yeah, that was going to be my mention for favorite line. That got a few chuckles in my nearly deserted cinema screening.
Is there I think this is the thing. Spider-Man's proven this now. We can't. I mean, people have their own health issues. Completely understandable, but we can't keep saying. People don't want to go to cinemas because of COVID, because Spider-Man is making the exact same amount of money pre-pandemic. It's just a fundamental thing of, and this sounds negative, and maybe I sound like a spoilt brat. People just don't like movies anymore. I know that sounds stupid, and it's so more nuanced than that. But Last Duel bombing, Gucci bombing, this bombing. I mean, what's the point?
I think film and stuff has just become so accessible now that you don't really have that same kind of screening process of like what is going to be like a great movie, like what is going to be cinema worthy, because you can have like anything you want from like a streaming service, like at the touch of a button, and there's not that same. I feel like you are among the very few that still kind of hold like, you know, appreciation for like which ones have Oscar buzz and, you know, which are going to be kind of defining the era. I don't think it's as easy as that anymore. I don't think you can categorically say that, just with like the sheer quantity over quality these days, like how much is getting churned out all the time.
But I'm also a huge hypocrite. My end of the year film list currently has No Time to Die at number 2. So like I'm a huge hypocrite. I
mean, if it's impactful, if it tells a good story, if it's good to watch, like that's all that matters. Like, yeah. But I just think people that aren't as precious about what's going to be really good to watch, like on the big screen. If it means that they can have it in their homes, they'll just have it in their homes. Especially now. And this is the thing:
Last Duel is on Disney Plus today.
Yeah.
I was flicking to watch Only Murders in the Building, which was fine. Maybe it has a really good ending. Maybe the ending episode brings it all together incredibly. And I was like, is that The Last Duel? Do I have to pay for that? And it was like, no, that's just free to watch on Disney Plus. It's like, I watched that in cinemas 2 months ago.
Yeah, just being bought immediately.
What are we doing? Anyway.
By the mouse.
By the mouse, big mouse. Excellent film. Jodie Comer, Best Actress nomination, hopefully, fingers crossed. And Adam Driver should be nominated for every single movie he's in. He was excellent in Annette. He was great in Gucci. He was great in The Last Duel. Of those 3 performances, I would like him to get nominated Best Supporting for Last Duel. But then again, I think Ben Affleck deserves a nomination for Best Supporting. Great nominations. Okay, Rhian, you are allowed, I'm going to make it difficult. You are allowed 4 nominations in all categories to give to West Side Story. What are your 4 nominations?
Okay.
I'm going to make it interesting. I think Best Picture's a lock. So let's remove Best Picture. And I think it's probably deserved. I think we've been very negative, but as I say, in a vacuum, this is one of the greatest films ever made. So
again, that means nothing.
I know. Removing Best Picture, what are the 4 nominations you're going to give this movie?
I would have to say, I would go Best Cinematography.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Janusz Kaminski.
I'm just having a look. I really liked the costume design, but I don't know if it was anything too stand out for me. Also, I had to Google when Converse were invented because it really threw me off having Tony in a puddle with his little like black and white all stars. But it was fun. It's like 1908 or something stupid. I think Best Actress. Best Supporting Actress for Ariana DeBose.
Yes, I completely agree with that one. I'm also going to say, I think Tony Kushner for Best Adapted Screenplay is a shout.
Yeah, I was going to ask, yeah.
But also then I think, is half of that screenplay Sondheim's lyrics?
I mean, yeah, but I think the way that they've adapted the book really, and the moments in between really made it.
It's based off a book.
So yeah, no, best actor screenplay I would say is a shoe in.
I think
Yeah,
there's an angle for Rita Moreno to be nominated for Best Supporting Actress again.
Yeah. Oh,
We haven't even talked about Rita Moreno yet. Let's talk about Rita Moreno.
Well, because we hadn't got to Somewhere, which
okay,
I
so
thought
where
was
are we?
a superb choice.
So Tonight Quintet, still the best song in the entire show. Absolutely
Agreed.
Sensational.
Yeah.
Kind of. I don't know. I think it was the ending where it zoomed in on Ariana DeBose, and it was the exact same zoom in that annoyed me at the end of Beauty and the Beast. And right, this really annoys me in movie musicals, and they do it a lot now. These applause breaks.
Yeah.
Why the hell are they giving applause breaks in a movie?
Because I mean, there's no other way to transition out of it sometimes.
There is just immediate.
It's such a big button or like climax, and you know it to be that. You know it's the moment. I mean, it's like with the quintet, it's the act one. Well, not the finale, but like the last big song.
Yeah.
And so you know that there's that big moment, and then so you need to build that atmosphere to then strip it down again. And so I think having that kind of pause followed by the kind of the shutters coming up in the salt shed, personally I didn't have too much of an issue with.
Yeah.
But there were other moments where it's like a really awkward pause.
It was the I Feel Pretty one.
Looking at them
there was like, I feel pretty thing.
Okay,
like, everybody get back to work. It was like, what? Why did you just...
Well, you know, what else are you meant to do?
Go straight to the next scene. Immediately straight to the next scene.
I don't know. I think you'd find that if the more they did that, the more jarring it would be. And like the less you'd feel like the scenes were, you know.
Yeah, you can make that argument, yeah.
I think with the songs as well, like they exist at like they hold up well as their own entities. And like as kind of the defining moments in a scene. So I think it's a large part of why the issue that I have with a lot of like completely sung through musicals. I don't like a lot of them because I feel like there's not as much of like giving it its own moment. Yeah.
Whereas then with a lot of completely sung through musicals, you also don't have the issue of song into scene, scene into song. Just like, oh, what are we doing? Yes, which leads us into the Rumble again, which I thought was very well done. And rather brutal and rather effective. That's about it, really. That's all that can be said there. Into I Feel Pretty, delightful and fun. For me, yes, I felt very harsh from one scene to the next and kind of tinged it of you have no idea the train that's going to hit you in a minute. Which works in some ways, but also just completely, you're like, okay, I don't need to watch 5 minutes of this woman being happy.
Yeah, I think obviously that's one that works or would work better on stage with like an interval break because you're being eased back into the action. You know what has just occurred, but you don't need to be like hit in the face with it as soon as you sit back down. So I think they've tried to like recreate that kind of feeling, but I don't know. I think it's not the kind of song that works with like kind of cutaways to violence. Like I think if it did, it would be like, it'd be terrifying. But yeah, I think they did the best they could with it because I think it was too good to keep out, really.
No, I just wanted it moved earlier. I don't know why that isn't before the Rumble. Tonight Quintet, I Feel Pretty. She's on this high. Oh, Maria, why are you so happy about it? You've got to clean this floor for 2 hours. Oh, I'm in love.
And I know because I think it works with driving the story forward. In that there's, you know, they're talking about Chino, thinking that that's who she's there for, and then Chino appears.
Well, then fine. Have
But
it
it's,
as
it's
her
even
getting
more
ready.
not what you expect it to be.
Have it as her getting ready for before one hand, one heart.
Yeah, I
Is that where it
could
is in
work,
the
to
original
be fair.
film? Is that where it is in the original film?
I don't
Yes,
think
it is. That is where it is in
Oh.
the original film. Yeah. Geoffrey, yeah. America, then Tonight, then Geoffrey Krupke, then I Feel Pretty, Getting Ready for One Hand, One Heart, Tonight Quintet, Rumble. So
Interesting.
then we get Somewhere, sung by Valentina. Absolutely beautiful, absolutely heartbreaking. Really lands a punch. It's phenomenally well done. This is one of the songs where they filmed without playback and they were sung live, which I thought also was very clear and done very well, of balancing that. They did A Boy Like That as well, which is arguably the best song in the show. But anyway, we'll get to that in a moment. Just beautifully well done. And
Yeah. And am I right in saying that the role was created for Rita Moreno?
well, it's originally a guy named Doc. It's originally Doc, and it's a guy, and he has a lot of the same beats that she has of, talking to the Jets. Come on, you need to stop being angry, taking Tony under his wing. And then it's a lot angrier with Doc down in the cellar. It's a lot of the girl's dead, the girl's dead. You're fighting your young boys. It's not the sensitive approach that she takes. Let's sit down for a moment, which was just, that was really beautiful and heartbreaking. And then Ansel Elgort kind of ruined it for me. He was like, which is a real thing that people react some ways. That.
Yeah.
But it just felt forced and hammy. We'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah,
But Somewhere was very good. I don't know why they did reprise Somewhere. I don't know why she had to sing Tonight at the end when holding Tony instead of Somewhere. I don't know why they were not ashamed. I don't know why they were shy to use Somewhere. One of arguably one of the most beautiful songs of all time.
And I also see why they used Tonight, because obviously that was their first moment of kind of shared understanding and like talking about the things that they wanted to do. Whereas Somewhere, obviously, especially in this version, you don't see their perspective as much, which I quite liked. Like, I really enjoyed seeing kind of Valentina's point of view and how she would have been like the Maria of her day, only for it to, work but not work.
Yeah.
And having Anita's moments as well, close up, that was heartbreaking. And it gave it a new
it gave it a new spin, but also then we're talking about what we're talking about with the 2021 angle. Having Valentina be in an interracial relationship at that time, and for that to have been quote unquote successful. We don't hear any horrible story. We don't hear any horror stories. We don't have anybody react to her. Maybe it's because she's a widow now.
She says, doesn't she? She says that she was seen as an honorary white woman because of her marriage. And so it was like she was kind of ethnically whitewashed essentially.
Then we need a throwaway line of Tony justifying it to Bernardo or justifying it to Riff and going, what about Valentino and Doc? Everybody was fine with that. We need that if you're going to introduce this element.
But then I don't think it was important to illustrate that people were okay with it. I think it's better to leave it a bit ambiguous, because you can only imagine the kind of adversity that they faced without the looming kind of gang violence on top of that.
Okay.
And I suppose for me it showed that like it could maybe work, if they were from these two different worlds. But because you throw in the Sharks and the Jets and that lingering tension, like, it's just doomed.
Yeah, no, of course. Which leads us then into A Boy Like That, I Have a Love. This is the Oscar clip for both of them, arguably.
Beautifully done.
Very, very well done. Yes, this yeah, this is great.
It was one of the few moments where I was watching it that I put my pretentious drama school head on, because I found that Ariana DeBose was so effective in that, because she was playing the trying not to cry and the trying not to let things come to the surface, whereas Rachel Ziegler kind of does the opposite. But I felt like that was very true to the characters, in that Maria would be very, wearing her heart on her sleeve like a child would, whereas Anita has had to toughen up and grow up a little bit. So I think very different acting choices, both worked really well in their own right. But like I said a little bit earlier, Anita kind of stole the show for me in that moment.
Oh yeah, definitely. It didn't feel like Rita Moreno and Natalie Wood, where it was a meeting of great actresses. I don't want to throw Rachel Ziegler under the bus, but her talents for me were definitely more so in the singing department. And I think
I think that's to be expected.
Yes. And I think it wasn't that visible in Tonight, because Ansel Elgort wasn't really, bringing it. So, but then when she's up against this Ariana DeBose, I mean, it's very evident that one is a supreme, is a better.
I think that's just come with experience. But again, it kind of serves the age of the characters.
Yeah, definitely.
Maria's green and what's the word? Just blissfully ignorant to a lot of pain that has already been experienced by the likes of Anita and Bernardo. So
how did you feel about the sex scene? Because for me, this has always been not a big problem with the show, but it's just always kind of felt, I've always felt like they should have, if you want them to have sex and you want this to be a carnal love as well, it should be after One Hand, One Heart. And maybe that's too early or whatever for 1958. But also, it just feels kind of, it's always felt bizarre to me.
I mean, when you look, it's one of those moments where if you start pulling at a thread, you've got no show. But I think for me, it's always made sense within the context of the story
and the intensity of those moments.
The depth of emotion, the intensity of, okay, this could be the last time I ever see you, and I want something to kind of mark the fact that we were both here and we had this love for each other. And also, I mean, from a very much 2021 psychological lens, they've both gone through incredible trauma. Their feelings are very mixed up, and it's the trope of people have the most sex at funerals instead of weddings. Is they don't know how to reconcile that feeling, and so it comes out in whatever way that it does. And so it's kind of the purest expression of love, I think, in that moment. And I think it was handled very sensitively.
Yeah.
In terms of visuals, nothing.
Oh, no, I didn't mean in that sense. I think but it's what you're talking about in the visuals and in the presentation. It was sort of handled like a love scene, but every plot justification we've just come up with is intensity and physical attraction and confusion. Yeah,
so I suppose maybe implement a little bit of that into the visual.
But also, I don't need Rita Moreno singing Somewhere over some hardcore intense.
Just hate fucking.
There's a place for us. It's like Team America just keeps cutting to these absurd angles. Which leads us out of that.
Yeah, it worked for me.
Yeah, no, it worked for me too. Again, it's what you're talking about. You've got to buy in. You've got to buy into it. Mambo, we've talked about the assault. Anything else you want to talk about in that scene? Again, very tastefully done, I thought. Also, Valentina coming out and you disgusting pieces of shit, just wonderful.
I wish she'd said that.
She did say that.
Pieces of shit?
She said pieces of shit.
No.
She's like, you animals, you pieces of shit. Because I thought, yeah, that's great. What a perfect, just like, because then afterwards she comes up with the articulate big speech. But in that moment,
raise you to become rapists. I missed that. That was brilliant.
Pieces of shit. I just loved that it was angry, and I just loved that it was off the cuff. And obviously, there's the history there of her playing Anita and all, and she never had. Now I'm forgetting the original film, and I can't remember what stops in the original film. But she doesn't have a. Oh, it might still be Doc. I don't know. I don't want to remember it wrong. But she in that original film never had that powerful woman figure to come in and stop it and
I think it said a lot in that moment, and maybe it was another thing that seemed a little bit forced within the dialogue to some people, because we saw everything we needed to see in that exchange of like pulling them off. And just the look of kind of also disgust and disappointment.
And then we go back to what we're talking about. Would Anita, in that moment, risk her life, there's no other way to say it, by doing this speech about, I am proud to be Puerto Rican? Or would she just rush out after the Chino announcement?
I mean, bearing in mind, obviously, what you said about there is another strong, like, female in the room of Puerto Rican descent. I mean, I don't know. Did she call her like a traitor at one point?
She calls her a traitor because there's a lovely moment where one of the jets is like, "Go back to where you're from," and he stood right next to her, and it is that sort of honorary white woman whitewashing that you were talking about, where and again, I thought, like, give me a couple of close-ups there. Give me a couple of close-ups of Valentina sort of biting her tongue. Or looking like I'm right here. Oh, well, not like that. Don't do a
not like that.
I'm not right like here. Don't do that.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one. I think maybe because in light of Valentina being in the room, she would feel comfortable enough to say it.
And all of her strong allied women outside as well.
Because this is what I mean. You could have had that, female ally thing with Valentina, and you kind of did without having
this is what I mean. Girls. It was like
just literally like
anybody's said leave, and I was like, okay, but you're a jet, you love the jets, what are we? And then the girls started, and I was like, oh my god, surely you'd just stay quiet because you love all these guys and you want to stay with them. And then Anita came out, and I thought, this is the first one that's actually felt real.
Yeah.
Because she, quote unquote, has nothing to lose.
Exactly. And,
in her age.
It's like, I understand the point that they were trying to make with it, that some things are just like too far and kind of transcend the whole like gang loyalty, especially because they're not fully in the ranks. But again, it's like you associate with these people, you take them for all their lumps, and you perpetuate the shit that they say. And I don't know, like, maybe it's not a thing with redemption. Maybe it's showing their hypocrisy more than anything. But again, I just didn't feel like it was the hard-hitting message that they thought it was.
No. And we've talked about alternates. And then we have the scene that I thought was very, very well done from Rita Moreno's end of performing, the admittance and the reveal of Maria possibly being killed by Chino. And then we get the final scene, which, as I've already said, I sort of kind of felt was forced and didn't land for me.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure of like the pace acting of it, because I think the two reveals that we've just seen was so painstaking, and like, so they really took their time both times. Because I think what worked in like the original and like in the stage versions is, like you say, with Doc, it's more of an angry kind of blurting out moment.
Well, he says, doesn't he? He's like, "You kids, when will you kids never learn?" That's the big angry thing from Doc.
Yeah, and I felt like we missed that. And it offset the slower kind of putting the knife in from Anita being like, she's dead. Because that, like, I appreciate, no time lost with that. Like, they gave that its own gravitas. But I think because they had that followed by a very arduous, very long, careful relaying of the information to Tony, it kind of just threw off the pace of the whole ending. And then they did have to take some of that time away from him running about the street, because there was only so much time we could.
This is 2 hours 38, and I didn't feel its length. Maybe it's just because
you say that about everything, though, and I always disagree with you.
I think no, but in this, I think a big thing is I don't watching things again. It never feels as long, because you're like, and because we know West Side Story so much, I'm going like, oh, there's only 20 minutes left.
Yeah, you know the layout.
And like watching Godfather Part 2 for the millionth time, I can go, okay, I can have a wee now or whatever. Go on then. You say, I always say this doesn't need too long or whatever. Do you?
It feels tight. Tight, 3.5 hours.
Well, no, this is my other big opinion. When it gets past a certain point, just put it all in. Every time I watch the Titanic deleted scenes, apart from the Kathy Bates, hey, how about some ice? And then the iceberg goes past. Apart from that one, I just go, put it back in. Like there's
put it in.
There's like 40 seconds. 40 seconds of the SOS, the Morse people going down with the ship. Put that in. That's an incredible true story that they kept sending SOSs. Just put it back in, James. Just like 40 seconds here and 40 seconds here. Sure, huge 5-minute scenes is a different matter. But
yeah, no, I agree.
An epic is an epic, and of course this is an epic.
It is, and it served, served the name, lived up to the, I think, everyone's expectations, and lived up to the original. So I had no problem with it being that long, but I did feel the length in certain parts, particularly at the end, when even when it's supposed to be that kind of guttural moment of time stopping, I think there was too much build up to it.
I think again I'm going back to the 1961 film being better. The placement of the songs helps an awful lot in making this 2.5 hours fly by, because if you have Cool as they do here before the rumble, and also having I Feel Pretty, whereas having the rumble before that, I Feel Pretty being before that is more enjoyable and hence goes by quicker. Having Cool after the rumble is more filled with anger and we have to get back, and again builds the tension. Oh my God, what's going to happen for that final 40 minutes? It's all about building the tension and building the tension. Anyway, yeah. Well, this leads us in conclusion, sort of, to final thoughts. I've said it an awful lot, and I'll say it again. If this is the only West Side Story movie, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I think many people would have said, what is the point of rebooting this? A lot of people have kind of come out in favor of more new productions and less revivals, because there's only so many times you can tell a certain story, especially one that's so rooted in oppression, without then there being so many caveats to like work around and still tell like a good story on all sides. That being said, I think this achieved that.
Yeah, this has a reason to be made. This has a very clear reason to be made. I will praise Natalie Wood and George Chakiris' performance until the day I die. I don't think they are, maybe it's not my place to say, I don't think they're caricatures. They are very nuanced portrayals. It's not right that they're playing other races.
Yeah, it wasn't their responsibility to do that.
And I think if we're talking about, well, another Rita Moreno movie, The King and I, if you want to remake a movie because of its depictions of race, do The King and I. Do something that is like cringeworthy to watch nowadays. Again, I'm a white guy, so West Side Story I've never watched West Side Story and watched Natalie Wood and cringed. I don't want to say, there are people saying, but I've listened to multiple Latinx critics who have talked about Natalie Wood and George Chakiris' portrayal as nuanced and as developed and as dimensional. That is a commonly held opinion in critic circles. I don't know nowadays if they're going to go, if those critics are going to go back on those opinions and in favor. I don't know. I haven't read their recent stuff on this modern film, but there is a reason to make this film. I personally don't think it's, from a critical point of view, I don't think it's as successful as the 1961 film. However, just take my sister. My sister has said this for weeks up until watching the movie, and she said it the minute we left. The minute my grandma turned to me, and my mum as well, and my mum was like, there's just some films that don't need to be remade. And her review was that it was just kind of dull. And my grandma too, she wasn't convinced with Tony at all. And she sort of immediately jumped on comparison notes and immediately jumped on it wasn't as good. And there is something to be said there when remaking a film. However, my sister, who's what? She's 19, 18. She immediately said, but I'd never watch the original film. Which makes me sick in a private corner of my stomach.
But it's a very good point. It's a very good point.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is a very good point.
But fortunately too, you know, it's truly something for everybody, this adaptation, not in a tokenistic way, not in a we're appeasing the woke culture of 2021. Like it serves its purpose in a way that still serves the text and the music, and it did not feel gimmicky on the whole.
No, it felt very justified. You've got incredible cast, incredible creative on it. This wasn't a throwaway remake.
No,
you know, it was a justified piece of art. I will buy it, but then again, I will buy it. I don't know any time where I'm going to, if I've got both my West Side Story Blu-rays next to each other, I don't know when I'm going to pick this one over that one. I just don't know when that's a decision I'm going to make. Unless I'm writing an article or needing to watch 2021 for a reason. And so people might say, why buy it then, Tom? Surely you have better things to spend your money on. And I'll say, not yet. Maybe in the future.
The artists.
Yes. But then, if I've got those two movies next to each other, I just don't know. I don't know when I'm going to pick this one. But that's just me. It's very, very clear that I am in a minority. Lots of critics have come out and said that this is infinitely better. We can talk about Oscars. This is one of the first episodes that we'll record that will come out within days of it being recorded.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many of the Oscar movies you've watched or the like. I'm slowly going through them now. I watched Being the Ricardos this morning. I love Nicole Kidman. I love Javier Bardem. I love all of these people. It's typical Aaron Sorkin. I love Lucy. I love Lucille Ball. I love Desi Arnaz. But it is typical Aaron Sorkin of everything's happening in one day. These things that would happen over 4 years. I was like, oh, come on, Aaron. That's his style, I guess. That's his style.
Straight to the point.
But I think I loved Spencer a lot. Did you watch Spencer?
I haven't yet. I've been meaning
Spencer's
to. It looks great.
It's her Oscar to lose. If I'm going to make bold predictions now, keep in mind I haven't watched. Well, Don't Look Up comes out on Friday. No, Don't Look Up comes out the day this comes out. I can't tell whether that's going to be the best movie of the year or the worst movie of the year. I just have no idea.
You heard it here first, folks.
You heard it here first. I have no idea.
We don't know.
I think there is a world where this sweeps the Oscars. I think there is
Will
a lot of critical backing.
No, I can't see that happening personally, but I think whatever it gets, it will be deserving of.
Yeah, I think there's a narrative there, isn't there? There's the narrative there of, oh my God, this is the first remake of a Best Picture winner to win Best Picture. There's the narrative of Ariana DeBose winning, just like Rita Moreno won. There is that narrative, and to be crude in this jerk off, patting ourselves on the back culture. Not that this is terrible as we've just praised it, but in this nostalgia driven, that's the sort of narrative that I think can succeed. And
yeah, I agree.
And maybe a Spencer will break through, maybe Kristen will win, hopefully. Maybe Don't Look Up is the best film of the year.
The only thing we love more than nostalgia is The People's
Nicole
Princess.
Kidman.
So,
Right.
The People's Princess, Nicole Kidman.
You're goddamn right. She's just incredible. She can do no wrong.
Yeah.
Who thought that she could play Lucille Ball? She's just doing it. She's having the time of her life. She's like, oh, I can do that voice. She's phenomenal. Oh God, I love Nicole Kidman. Just what a woman. Just Nicole Kidman. Nicole Kidman is the only person I would be happy beating Kristen Stewart this year. Because Carrie Coon's not going to get nominated for The Nest. Actually, I think The Nest isn't even eligible. I think The Nest was last year. The Nest is excellent. Everybody go watch The Nest. Jude Law, Carrie Coon. I'll do that on this podcast eventually. That'll be another sad relationship drama we can get you and David off from.
Brilliant. Cannot wait.
45 Years is coming out later now because we've moved all the Sundance stuff. Anyway, so look forward to that in a year and a half. The West Side Story. What's your next? Fine then. So this was your most anticipated movie of this year. What's your most anticipated movie of this coming year? What are you most excited for?
God, I don't even know what's coming out.
Death on the Nile. Another movie that they're just, steaming ahead without doing the Christopher Plummer technique of, I guess, right. Okay. So people can turn this off now if they don't agree with how we feel. On a completely moral level, like refilming the Kevin Spacey stuff in All the Money in the World with Christopher Plummer was easy enough because it was only in 5 scenes. But and again, a lot of the Ansel Elgort stuff is in the allegation territory. None of it's gone to trial, none of that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do find it kind of weird that just nobody's addressed it at all.
Well, I think it seems like a kind of contractual thing that they're not allowed to speak about it, at least within the cast.
Like Chalamet with Rainy Day in New York with Woody Allen. Mm-hmm. You know what's really funny? The interview where he's like, I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it. He's sat next to Armie Hammer. But anyway, that's another matter.
Yes, I know.
That's a whole other kettle of fish.
And in the beginning, I noticed that he was kind of kept out of a lot of the promotion, which is like miraculous that they even found a way to do that with like one of the leads. But then they kind of leaned into it more because they had a lot of behind the scenes stuff with him in it, like immediately before the release. So I don't know if it was like a money driven thing of them being like, we've made this now, we've shot it, we just need to lay low until enough people forget. I mean, Rachel Ziegler, in a very candid yet, underhanded way, didn't address it, even though she had a lot of people in her social media comments, but did put believed survivors in her Twitter bio.
Okay, yeah, so it's there.
In the end. So it's kind of like they've had to be very subtle about it in expressing their views.
Yeah. But what are these contracts? What contract says? I mean, again, I don't know anything. I know everything, but I also know nothing. So, like,
yeah, I don't know what
contract
would technically
says
prevent them from discussing it. Whether it was like something was under investigation and hadn't been leaked to the press or not.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it does seem like a lot of it has died down. But then in the kind of social spheres that I'm in, people are still very much like the general consensus from a lot of people my age were like, I'm going to see this movie for Rachel Ziegler, for Ariana DeBose.
Well, this is the thing with all of this, with all of the Me Too new releases, those sorts of films that were coming out, and it's going to be the case with Death on the Nile again. There's a lot of well, no, I don't want to say that Death on the Nile is going to be excellent because contrary to popular belief, Murder on the Orient Express was a bad movie. But there are what 500 people? No, there are at least 500 people whose work is on display, and for one person to bastardize that, and is its own private tragedy. In no way on the level of the alleged tragedies, but is its own horrific thing.
I think that's a very good way of looking at it. Is, I mean, especially with film, this is the love child of, you know, so many people. Yeah. So I'm never gonna.
It's like any person you want to talk about. I will watch LA Confidential all the time because it's Russell Crowe's best performance. It's Guy Pearce's best performance. Maybe not, maybe Priscilla. But like LA Confidential is one of the best films ever made. Space is there. Like we don't need to do the whole Me Too conversation and the art and the artist conversation. It's easier for some people. It's not as easy for some. Some people just can't do it. Like American Beauty. Kevin Spacey, if I'm completely honest, is probably in my top 10 actors of all time. Is he on the list I have on the podcast? No, because I will never admit that anymore. American Beauty.
You know, this is going out to air.
People don't watch this. No, but American Beauty is one I struggle with because he's literally playing a pedophile in it. And it's kind of what we were talking about earlier of you were saying we were both skating around the thing of the relationship dynamic because she's playing it more childish and he's playing it like an adult. And yeah, that was icky at points for me. But this is a huge conversation, which I thought we've touched on. And we've talked about West Side Story as a film itself, because on a final note, it is an incredible triumph that it's not irrelevant. It's not a completely pointless film, which for months I've said that my prediction would be that it's going to be a really, really good movie, just inherently pointless. Because in so many ways, anyway, but it's not pointless. It is its own film in its own right. In a vacuum, it would be the greatest film of all time.
I'm telling you how many times you said that now.
I'll have a little ding, but
ding.
Why is this movie 2 hours and 38 minutes? Ding. When did you? This is always a good sign of people. When did you stop watching Cinema Sins?
Oh God, like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, for me it was when they started like doing stupid sins. I know that this is everybody's opinion on it.
I mean, the time that I watched it, they were always doing stupid sins, and like that was the entertainment value. But then a lot of people started to take issue with the level of satire bordering on like the creepy.
The creepy?
Yeah, like there were moments, I think it was the Harry Potter Cinema Sins, where he sinned it because Emma Watson was too young to be hot yet.
What the hell is this? What the hell?
I
What
know.
private corner of hell of the internet is this?
I know.
This is a podcast that's had me talk about my complete love of Nicole Kidman multiple times. I'm saying that like it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Nicole Kidman is a beautiful, beautiful, big word, adult woman.
I mean, I mean it in terms of like in the first few Harry Potter films, as she was an actual child.
Oh no, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
know, yeah.
So that kind of tainted the experience just a tad.
Yeah, maybe. And then he was probably like, Emma Watson, I'm weirdly attracted to, but she's a kid. Ding. Why does the Horcrux not break? And then it's just like straight into
essentially that.
Rewind.
So, yeah.
Rewind.
I'm my own cinema sins now. I have informed opinions.
Yes, this is true. And we can discuss those opinions as we have done on this podcast. Is there an emergency podcast you want to be on in the future, Rhian? Is there a new? I know we talked about our most anticipated of the year. Is there an emergency release that you want to do?
If I think of one, I shall let you know. But
yeah,
I think this was really all I'd had my hopes on for the year. I hadn't really looked to the future.
Is there should we do a reverse emergency podcast and do Dear Evan Hansen, which I still haven't seen?
Oh, no, I haven't either. I've seen too much slander, and I should watch it because of that, but yeah, maybe.
I finally watched Diana the Musical after your reverse recommendation. However, me and my sister...
My warning. I think it's called a warning. Watch if you dare.
We only watched the first act. The first act.
The first act. There's 4.
Like a tragedy, like a Shakespeare. No, all in all,
it was a tragedy. It was a flaming.
It was a national tragedy, and also it was a musical tragedy.
Yeah.
However, what isn't is West Side Story. Watch whatever
Good
version
segue.
you want. 1961's a masterpiece, and this is probably a masterpiece too.
This podcast is a masterpiece.
This podcast is a masterpiece. Rhian, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Great film. It feels weird that we're ending on great film, even though we spent most of this railing it. You were more positive than me.
The things that I didn't care for as much, but then I think I also gave it a lot of praise.
Oh yeah. And that is, as they say, that.